Is my presentation seen? Yes. Yes, we can see it. I will describe the way that NSD exercises corporate action and where we are in terms of automation and what else we need to do in this respect. And I will also tell you a little bit about change management at NSD, how software novelties are put in place and approved. Automation period for corporate action in NSD started in 2014 when NSD digitalized and corporate action information and put it into a cascade process that now information received from issuers is delivered to NSD in machine readable form and then cascaded to market participants. At the same time, we established a cascade process for proceeds payment on the shares and bonds. All the money went from the accounting infrastructure and cascaded all the way to the final investor or beneficial owner. The next stage was so-called corporate action reform. This is when Russia implemented an important change in legislation that happened in 2016, which made it possible to put voluntary corporate action into cascade, such as meetings of shareholders and bondholders, buyback and third-party purchase, and the preemptive rights. As part of this reform, NSD transferred to international standards, ISO 20022, and in fact, we put into one system, unified all standards and information delivery methods throughout the Russian securities market. Since that reform, our efforts towards automation and improvement of infrastructure has continued, and there are still some corporate actions which are yet to be fully automated and to be put under ISO format. Since 2016 and up to now, we have automated a number of corporate actions, which I will describe later. This is what reform has done. To the left, you see the before situation, before 2016, when the shareholder and issuer were communicating directly. In many cases, that involved paper document flow, such as voting ballots were physically delivered to the shareholder. You had to also provide a paper power of attorney because the issuer had to confirm the authority of the individual who participates in the corporate action. This procedure was costlier for both Russian and international investors and prevented their access to the Russian market. After the reform, the information and voluntary CA instructions have become cascaded, and it involves a link involving a registrar and lower registries and depositories, and all corporate actions are now exercised in a single format, which is approved by all market players in a standard manner, and the NSD has become the official source of corporate information. That is, all corporate information on securities, issuers, and other suppliers of information is accumulated by NSD, which publishes this on the website, and NSD in this case acts as official information source, such as a golden entry. This is a schematic diagram of how market participants interact in terms of corporate action. To the left, you see sources of information such as ICSD or global custodians, where NSD holds foreign securities, including your clear stream. Then there are Russian legal entities and Russian securities, and on with ICSD we communicate through SWIFT channels, ISO 15022. This is here to the left. As for issuers, registrars, and the information agents, there are two ways: through NR Direct, which is in fact a web interface, which enables them to see balances on securities accounts, see forthcoming corporate actions, and also allows for participation by communicating or instructions. Said NRD is in effect an API which allows for interaction between the registrars and NSD. This uses ISO 2022 format, and this is bilateral traffic of messages, that is STP, without any manual input. Having received information on forthcoming corporate action, NSD then distributes it. First of all, it publishes it on its website, and then using the same formats 20/22 and 15/22, it distributes information to its clients, depositories, and market participants. The same channels are used, a SWIFT and are direct, or it can be STP communication can also be tuned in with lower depositories. There are certain advantages from standardization of channels of information for corporate action. First of all, it makes the functioning of the securities accounting system more transparent and more efficient, because all information is distributed in a centralized manner, and it is structured and is subject to automation in terms of how you receive information, put it into database, process information, or use it for analytical purposes or for operational purposes. And obviously, this is much more efficient compared to receiving information in a non-machine readable code, Flash HTML. But of course, for the convenience of market participants, we also implement a visualized forms for corporate actions, which enables the operator to read it, understand what it means, and then make certain decisions. We have developed a single platform for corporate action. In this case, NSD is the central point in the chain, which has developed both formats and communication channels. Another advantage of this structure is that we provide a guaranteed settlement system. For example, in the case of securities repurchase by the issuer, the shareholder will not have securities withdrawn until the issuer delivers cash to NSD in settlement. So the DVP principle is used, delivery versus payment. So securities are withdrawn and the shareholder receives cash. Another goal for us is to introduce international standards for corporate action, 15/22 and 20/22, gradually step by step, all global custodians, central depositories, and the whole structure is migrating towards the more advanced 2022 format. As of today, just like many other market participants, we support both formats, the new one and the old one, just for convenience, so that all the market participants can have all their needs covered. Also, the changes that were implemented serve to minimize the risks involved in manual information input, minimize manual work generally by operators. So as we have automated and are in the process of automating as many processes as possible to avoid errors or incorrect information entry. This is a summary of what we have done in terms of automation. Informational core protection under ISO 20022 and 15022 formats. We've introduced a cascade process for meeting information notification and e-proxy voting when the shareholder participates in the meeting by instructing the depository, and the depository then delivers the instruction to the issuer through the chain. The NSD also developed a platform for voting. In this way, they bypass the chain of their depositories, which is a more convenient service that the NSD offers to its issuers, to the issuers. The process of repurchase and the preemptive rights were also automated. We recently launched a single format for disclosing information on shareholders when the law requires that this information be disclosed. We had also a big project to automate corporate action involving foreign securities kept in euros clear and Clearstream, and we also automated some mandatory corporate action under the conversion category. And these are things that are yet to be done. There are a number of legislative initiatives which are in process now, and these draft laws are aimed to better exercise the rights of shareholders, better inform shareholders about the corporate actions. The new resolution will replace the existing regulation by the central bank describing how issuers must inform their shareholders about planned or forthcoming corporate actions. This means that we also have to amend our existing formats and processes, because the new law will introduce a number of new codes, and the structure of messages will also change somewhat. Also, our future plans in the immediate future include completing the project for corporate action automation, such as reorganization, mergers and acquisitions, and spin-offs. In this way, information from registrars will be received by NSD in a structured way and under ISO formats to avoid manual entry of corporate action data, and so that this information can be delivered to the market in the same structured format. Another initiative is tax agencying under the code BPUT. BPUT is activated when the issuer buys back or calls, or there is a call on bond. And the idea is that the issuer would provide NSD with additional information on the payment of cash or redeemable bond, and the issuer will be able to provide NSD with more detailed information on tax rates in the case when the amount paid or payable to investor is subject to different exchange rates, depending on whether it's par value or coupon income, etc. And also there is adaptation in view to European regulations, the so-called SRD2, which aims to further improve the mechanism for information disclosure with respect to shareholders on the European market. That directive is already in force, but just because some major market players, including Euroclear and Clearstream, are still in the process of updating their formats to comply with this directive, we face a somewhat late start, and NSD is getting ready for that as well. So under this directive, the process of collecting holders lists will be updated, and we will move to using 20021 instead of 15021, which is used by global custodians even now. Also, the process of shareholder meeting notification will be updated, and the process of completing the list of participants. And these are standard automation steps in NSD. In fact, NSD has adopted a single standard for any changes that are exercised, not only for corporate action. This is a more general and standard process which concerns any new initiative whenever software needs to be changed or upgraded. So in the first stage, the task is set to the responsible units. If this involves interaction with our clients, the NSD will set up working groups to discuss the anticipated changes. For this purpose, we have specially established committees that may suggest any relevant changes or amendments. If it's about formats changed, they must be agreed with the clients. We normally start this process at least half a year before, normally a year before. If those changes can also be associated with new legislation and the automation which I mentioned before, such as reorganization of joint stock companies, or for example, we will automate the dividend information process, in which case new formats will have to be agreed with our clients. As a next step, we define the business requirements, and this is done on the IT side, when the analysts who are responsible for the process translate the task into the language which is usable for automation. If needed, we develop a flow chart, meaning that if the process is complex, we need to make sure how all the participants will interact from entry point to exit point, which are the stages which the instruction will go through or a report will go through. Then analysis takes place, followed by development and testing. These are all standard stages in any change management process. Then it comes to test operation, when the complete functionality is tested in business units, when our employees test how the new functionality works to see how it will work in real life. In this stage, they identify any errors which are corrected, and then they also are trained to use it. Also, external testing is done with our shareholders in a test mode as well, so that the customers, the clients could also find any flaws in that. So before we make the final launch, we could put everything right. That's all. Thank you for attention, and I'm ready for your questions. Thanks a lot, Roman. Very, very concise presentation. You tell us a lot about automation and processes which are involved, and I'm sure colleagues will find it useful.